Hi, everyone. We have an incredible episode coming up for you, but we wanted to give you a disclaimer before you move forward. We do address the world of sex crimes and the way that they are exploited on the internet. So please, if that is a trigger for you, know that moving forward with this episode.
I mean, this is a story of what the Financial Times has called one of the biggest takedowns of content in internet history, as Pornhub has been forced to delete 91% of their entire website because it was infested with videos of real sexual crime, including the torture and rape of children, of adults, of all kinds of non-consensual content. And I talk about a spectrum of abuse all the way from child assault to, adults who've been raped and trafficked, to what used to be called revenge porn, but is image-based sexual abuse, where it could be consensually recorded and then non-consensually uploaded online.
Even in just listening to more of the stories now, recently knowing you'd be with us, my heart is torn into pieces. It is information we all need to know, a cause I think everyone would want to get behind the minute they listen to you speak and why you're in this. We all have kids. We want to protect our kids from it.
Pornhub currently, they're being sued by nearly 300 victims in 25 lawsuits. That includes class actions on behalf of tens of thousands of child victims. The teen genre on Pornhub was one of the most popular genres on that site. Like, it was a category on Pornhub that was one of the most popular categories for years. And they would brag about this until they got caught.
You've talked to owners of the company. You've talked to people that were inside. What did you learn that shocked you?
Okay. How do you envision, knowing that the porn industry will never go away, but how do we make it a safe environment for it to exist?
Mm-hmm.
Oldish, the show where age-old questions meet new-age answers. With your hosts, Randy Spelling, Brian Austin Green, and Sharna Burgess.
So today on Oldish, we have Laila Mickelwait. She's the co-founder and CEO of Justice Defense Fund, the founder of the Trafficking Hub movement, supported by millions around the world, and the national best-selling author of Takedown, Inside the Fight to Shut Down Pornhub for Child Abuse, Rape, and Sex Trafficking. She's been researching and combating the injustice of sex trafficking since 2006 and is a leading expert in the field. Laila, thank you so much for being with us today.
And welcome to Oldish.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have to share, when it came to us to have you on as a guest, I was instantly a yes. I signed your petition, I would say 7 years ago, and have been along on this journey with you. And I'm so grateful that you're here. And even in just listening to more of the stories now, recently knowing you'd be with us, my heart is torn into pieces. It is information we all need to know, a cause I think everyone would want to get behind the minute they listen to you speak and why you're in this. We all have kids. We want to protect our kids from it. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, and for those listening and watching that don't know your story and what you are doing with the Justice Defense Fund, how you got into this, please could you fill them in?
I will. And I am so encouraged to hear that you're one of the early believers in this fight for justice. And the petition started, it feels like it's been 7 years, but it started in 2020.
Was it 2020? I was in my Belden house. I'm so sorry. I just remember the house I was in. So much life has happened, but I remember it coming across.
It feels like 10 years to me, honestly, because it's just been a long fight. But to me, it just makes so much of a difference. Every single person who jumps in, signs what you did, sign a petition, share a post, talk about it. Like, it all has, accumulated and created such a meaningful impact that I love hearing that you this is not the first time you've heard about this. You've been in it for years with me. So I love that. But to your question, so, this is a story of what the Financial Times has called one of the biggest takedowns of content in internet history, as Pornhub has been forced to delete 91% of their entire website because it was infested with videos of real sexual crime, including the torture and rape of children, of adults, of all kinds of non-consensual content. And I talk about a spectrum of abuse all the way from, child assault to, adults who've been raped and trafficked to what used to be called revenge porn, but is image-based sexual abuse, where it could be consensually recorded and then non-consensually uploaded online. And it all started because in the context of 15 years of fighting sex trafficking, I started to notice that there was an intersection between what I call the big porn industry and sex trafficking, where these crimes were being filmed and they were being uploaded online in a digital world we live in. Trafficking was going from not only on the streets, but also to the internet. And there were some early headlines in 2019 that really arrested my attention and caused me to have a haunting question that I answered that began this movement. And, so one of those stories in late 2019 was a 15-year-old girl who was missing for an entire year. And she was finally found after her distraught mother was tipped off by a Pornhub user that he recognized her daughter on the site. And she was found in 58 videos being raped for profit. Pornhub was earning 35% of the sale of this child's rape. And they matched his face with 7-Eleven surveillance footage and rescued her from the apartment. She had been impregnated. He had forced her to have an abortion. It was a horror story that I read and this was late 2019. At the same time, in the headlines, there was a story of a woman named Nicole Armando that just haunts me even to this day. And she was tortured. She was raped by her partner, who uploaded that abuse to Pornhub, and she ended up killing him in self-defense. But she was sentenced to life in prison, separated from her 2 young children for that. And then there was the London Sunday Times, they found dozens of children on Pornhub, even children as young as 3. So I was reading those headlines, and I was up late one night with my own crying baby, who was 3 months old at the time. And I had a question come to mind. How in the world did this content end up on Pornhub? And I had an idea. I said, I'm going to test the upload system and see what it takes. And I found out what millions of people already knew. And that was that all it took was an email address to upload to the world's most popular porn site. This is the YouTube of porn. They weren't checking ID to make sure it wasn't a child. They weren't checking consent to make sure it was a rape or trafficking victim. And then because of that, the site became completely infested with videos of real sexual crime. And I said, I have to sound the alarm on this. And that's when the movement began. That's when the petition started that you signed. And we've come a long way since then.
You had a 3-month-old and you were, nothing like motherhood to energize you and wanting to protect children, first of all. But bless you. That is, thank you for everything that you're doing. When you speak about children as young as 3 years old, it just makes me feel sick to my stomach. It's so devastating to think. And then to think all the way up to, it's not just children, but a mother that is being raped by her husband, and those videos are being exploited and she goes to jail for that. The injustice in that just infuriates me. I cannot imagine how much work you have to do and how much support you need to further this cause.
How did you, just to dumb this conversation down for a second, how did you physically even start this movement? And did you start this single-handedly, or
where did it begin?
Did you have a group of people where you were like, hey, let's all get together and do this? How did this come about?
So that night, when I made it was kind of an organic, in the context of a lot of preparation, right? I've been fighting this battle against sex trafficking at large for so many years, but then it really narrowed in to this particular villain when I made that discovery that night. And it organically, in a very grassroots way, evolved on social media first. I took to Twitter immediately and I said, this Pornhub says that everybody on this site is a consenting adult. This is a lie. This website is a trafficker's dream come true. This is the upload system. and I started to tag everybody that I could and started the hashtag trafficking hub, because according to our definition of trafficking in the United States and internationally, anyone under the age of 18 who's used in a commercial sex act, so that means a sex act for profit, where there's some exchange of value, is a victim of sex trafficking if they're under 18. If it's by force, fraud, or coercion, so if it's non-consensual, then that also is trafficking. So this was a trafficking hub, and that hashtag started to catch on. I wrote an op-ed that was published exposing what I had learned, connecting these stories and connecting the dots. That started to get a lot of traction. And then it was actually not even my idea to start the petition. I had a follower who said, hey, you need to start a petition to shut down Pornhub, because if you don't do it, I'm going to do it. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And immediately went viral. Today, we have 2.3 million signers from every country in the world. And it just started this snowball effect where the virality of what was happening. I mean, we have like hundreds of millions of views on social content now, and thousands of media articles have been written, but it all kind of evolved as people individually, one by one, started to share. And that's how victims then started to come forward, because the viral petition and the media articles and the social media, they started to come to me. Not only that, but whistleblowers from inside the company started to come forward to share what was going on. Insiders, the moderators themselves started to expose the company's horrific practices. Even the former owner of Pornhub came forward to help.
Yeah,
Wow.
I saw you speaking about that before.
I want to get into that more, because I think that's really important
interesting,
to understand.
yeah.
But I just want to cite some statistics for people so they can get a grasp of the scale of Pornhub. So tell me if I have all this right. But back in 2020, Pornhub was the 10th most visited website. Yeah?
That is true at the beginning of 2020. But listen to this. By the time the pandemic was in full swing in 2020, they capitalized on the pandemic. They became the 5th most visited website on the internet.
Yeah. On the internet?
By December of the whole internet, more than Netflix, Amazon, Yahoo. Researchers named them the 3rd most influential tech company on global society, behind Facebook and Google.
Global society.
Wow.
Right, global. No,
global.
I mean, that's just the scale.
Right.
14 billion ads per day.
4.6 billion ad impressions are sold on Pornhub every single day. And that is too, at the height of the pandemic, they had 62 billion visits to the site per year and 170 million visits per day. And they had 56 million pieces of content on the site. So they had, they were having enough content uploaded every year. It would take 169 years to watch if you put those videos back to back. So this was I call it a behemoth of abuse. And it was a wash with so it was legal content, right? And this is free porn. So this is the YouTube of porn, free porn going out to everybody, even children, right? There's no age gate to access Pornhub, and I call it a crime scene.
Oh, right, because it's a free website. So there's not even an ID to access it.
No. So there was no ID requirement to upload, and there's no ID requirement to watch it. And that's the same today. Like today, 8-year-olds could go on Pornhub and watch a real rape or sexual crime as their sex education from the age of 8, 9, 10 years old. As soon as they have a tablet in their hand, they have access to Pornhub and the big porn tube sites.
How is that possible? I don't understand that.
How? Yeah,
I don't
how
like.
it
I
got so
can't.
relaxed.
How is that possible that there's no gateway for
Or
that?
regulation
That there's
on
no
it?
regulation.
Like my kids play Roblox, and that is like a nightmare to set up an account on. And then you've got
with
something
parental
Right,
controls.
right.
and then you've got
yeah.
something as as detrimental as Pornhub, and it could not be easier
All they need to know is
go
know
on
the
and
address.
access. That
They
is
search just curious, even butts, boobs, whatever. Pornhub makes sure that they're top search results for anybody searching any kind of sexual related content. And even if they're not, like they could accidentally search something that got them on Pornhub in a couple clicks. It could be on that homepage, auto autoplay videos, and, you know, they could be watching legal porn, but they could also be watching a crime scene. And none of that is appropriate for children, for sure. But children are being abused right in front of the screen because it's traumatic. I mean, I have had to witness these crimes, and it is traumatizing for me as an advocate, as an adult who is watching this to expose it. And I can't imagine how traumatic it could be for a child or a teen to experience that same thing. And part of this was, you know, it's like the teen genre on Pornhub wasn't the most popular genres on that site. Like, it was a category on Pornhub that was one of the most popular categories for years. And they would brag about this until they got caught actually having real teens that were underage. Like, teen, yes, it's 18, 19. It's also 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, all of which are felony crimes to distribute and to possess even. So, but as far as scale, so Pornhub was as big as we just described, but it's even bigger than that because the parent company of Pornhub was a company called MindGeek. And with a $362 million loan from Colbeck Capital with 125 secret investors that included, we found out, Cornell University and JP Morgan Chase, they rolled up the entire global porn industry. They own a virtual monopoly on the whole thing. They own most of the world's most popular porn sites and brands, and Pornhub is one of them. So it's like their flagship site. It's their cash cow, but they own many of the other tubes too, like RedTube, YouPorn, TubeBait, ExtremeTube, GayTube. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And this is all one company, and they operate the same way, all those sites.
So that's so dark.
It's
that's so dark.
This is one of those rabbit holes that when you start going down, I can only imagine what it was like for you going down this rabbit hole. It sounds like you've been at this for years, but how far does it go, and how deep does it go, and how wide does it span? And I think it's a really relevant conversation given that, you know, in the news, there's a lot going on.
Oh, there's a lot going on.
And, you know, sort of how far that reaches. So I do have to ask this question because we're there. How nefarious is this? I mean, you've talked to owners of the company. You've talked to people that were inside. What did you learn that shocked you?
It wasn't an accident. That wasn't shocking to me, understanding how the company operated from day one when I discovered that they just allowed people to upload like homemade sex videos.
So they knew.
No verification. It's not just that they knew. They allowed it, and they monetized it, and they made it really hard. They built it this way, and they made it hard for victims to get that abuse down. And even when they were able to get it down, they would beg for this I've seen the begging emails from victims where please, I'm underage. This is, you know, child sexual abuse. This is a felony crime. Please. And they would be ignored, or if they were responded to in certain cases that we know about, they were hassled. Prove to us that you're a victim. Prove that that's you in the video. And then if they would get it down, it would just get uploaded again and again and again. So there's the case of Serena, for example, and this could be anybody's daughter. I'll give you an example. She was a 14-year-old from Bakersfield, California. And she was an innocent 14-year-old. She'd never kissed a boy before. She was a straight A student. And there was a boy, and she had a crush on a boy a year older than her, who convinced her to send him some nude images and videos of herself. And she wanted to impress him. And she did. And then he shared them with his classmates against her will. And then they got uploaded to Pornhub, where they got millions of views. And when she would beg to get those down, they would just get re-uploaded again and again and again. And this sent her on a spiral of trauma. She was bullied at school, so she had to drop out of school. She ended up getting addicted to drugs because she was trying to numb the pain. She tried to kill herself multiple times. And then she ended up homeless, living out of her car. And that is the trajectory of one of these victims. They call it the immortalization of their trauma, where it's, you know, for the cases of rape, like there was a 12-year-old boy in Alabama who was drugged, overpowered, and raped by a man named Rocky Shea Franklin, who filmed 23 of those assaults of this boy and uploaded them to Pornhub, where they were being sold for profit, even with titles such as, young. In the title itself would have the word young or Uncle Secret, things like that. And so they say it's one thing to be raped, right? Or to have abuse happen. But then it's filmed and then it's uploaded and then it's immortalized online because they put a download button on every video. So that 5 million users an hour had the opportunity to possess that rape on their devices and then upload it again and again, not only to Pornhub, but to other websites on the internet. And so these victims live in this perpetual nightmare that the worst moment of their life will now live on long after they're dead. And it's so tormenting that the rate of suicidal ideation for these victims is nearly 50%. So we think about this as an actual life and death issue for our children and for adults as well who are victims of this crime. But can you
imagine that? I mean, people go their lifetime without talking about these sexual experiences and traumas that they dealt with when they were young within family members and friends. And this is those situations happening and then
posted on the internet, everyone else
monetized
and being teased
and
at
live
school
forever. So it's, I mean, you've not only done the crime, but then you have just completely taken control of the way it is put out to the world, and nobody can.
The exploitation is
for these
maddening.
victims too. It's like, when they want to heal, it's almost like you're constantly
reopening
engaging the wound.
They don't have an opportunity to heal.
You
They
just can't close it because it'll just be, and they even are at the grocery store because this is the mainstream web. Like, this is the surface web. This isn't the dark web. And they say it's even so much worse when it's on a site like Pornhub because Google's crawling. Sometimes it has their actual name in the title of videos, their school, their hometown, so that anybody who's searching Google for them will come up with their abuse video, and they can't even hardly go to the grocery store to thinking who has seen the worst moment of my life. Who am I standing here?
It seems ludicrous to me that there's no punishment.
Yeah,
for it.
how is Pornhub still operating? I don't.
Yeah. And they were monetizing this.
I really do not understand that aspect of it because it's like it's. If a much smaller business did anything anywhere close to this, it seems like they would all be in prison for life.
Well, we're working
week.
towards it. I mean, there was a site called Backpage that was selling cars online in the classifieds, and they were also selling children. And it took 10 years before the full weight of justice was brought to bear. And Pornhub currently, they're being sued by nearly 300 victims in 25 lawsuits. That includes class actions on behalf of tens of thousands of child victims. And they have had criminal charges brought to them by the U.S. federal government. However, they were offered a deferred prosecution agreement by the government where they said, if you pay $1.8 million,
that's
and
nothing.
It's nothing to them. And if you agree to a babysitter to watch over your site for 3 years, we will not move forward with this prosecution. And that really infuriated victims because they said, this is not justice. So we're pressing ahead. Like, I got Takedown, the book, in the hands of every U.S. state attorney general because they could be prosecuted state by state. Also, in Canada, where they're headquartered, they can be prosecuted for violating the law there. One thing that they did there was that in Canada, it's mandatory to report. When you're aware of child sexual abuse on your site, you have to report it, and it's a crime if you don't. And we have evidence. We have the testimony of the head agencies for child protection in North America who said on the record, in Parliament and in depositions, Pornhub went 13 years without reporting a single instance of child sexual abuse they knew about. And think about that, the way that they were hiding this because it really ruins a brand, right? Like they're out there with their like philanthropy arm called Pornhub Cares, where they're doing all these PR stunts to save the whales and save the bees and, donate to breast cancer research and doing, trying to like project this particular image to the world. Like they have faux commercials on Saturday Night Live. And if people knew that their site was infested with child abuse, that would really damage the brand. So they were hiding this for 13 years until this movement.
How many videos were taken down?
91%.
91%.
91% of the whole website had to be flushed down the toilet because it was all unverified content and infested with real sexual crime. They also lost Visa, MasterCard,
Did they?
Discover.
Did that finally happen?
So it finally did
Because I knew that was a part
I know
of it being
you
a
were
part of
pushing
it.
for that for a while.
How long did that
Yes.
take?
Yes. So we started this in 2020, and by the end of 2022, they finally had lost all credit card processing, and they also lost all mainstream business partners and advertisers like KY Jelly and Astroglide won't even advertise on Pornhub anymore because it is so toxic because they have such a bad reputation. The CEO and the COO were forced to resign from the company. And get this, there was a secret shareholder. So the majority shareholder of Pornhub and its parent company was hiding his identity from the public for years. Nobody even knew he existed. And the story told in the book is how he was found and he was exposed, he was named, he was located.
Wait, so I can read the name in your book.
Your book. Amazing.
Bernsberg Mayer is the name of the secret majority shareholder. And guess who told that to me? The former owner of Pornhub, who came forward to help, and he revealed who that secret majority shareholder was. And he finally got located and exposed. And today he's being sued by Serena. So Serena, the victim from Bakersfield that I told you about, well, she's not just sitting there idly by, letting her life be destroyed. She is taking control. She is up on her feet, and she is suing the hell out of Pornhub, its owners, its individual owners, and she's suing Visa, and she's suing the hedge funds that gave that $362 million loan to Pornhub's parent company to roll up the industry.
Good for her.
So
why is this not I mean, you have done incredible work. You have a massive amount of signatures. When I listen to it, I have had a deep fear of my kids being trafficked since I became a mother. It's like the biggest fear that I have is my worst nightmare. It lives with me. And I know every other parent in my circle has the same thing. Yet this conversation, we're in a political, a very political year. Sorry, we're voting for a president this year. We've watched many debates but none of this ever gets brought up. We talk about so many other things, but one of the biggest money-making businesses in this country is trafficking. And one of the biggest epidemics that is happening is the sex trafficking, the crimes against children. Yet this, I think, would be a conversation that everyone wants to have. But why is it not something that is spoken about on a political stage yet?
that's such a good question.
It is a really good question.
I'm really wanting to know what you think about it too, because it's important to my work that people talk about it. And, I think it's such a dark and ugly and scary reality. And I think maybe people's natural instinct as human beings is to avoid pain, is to avoid discomfort. And I think that's part of it, is that we just don't want to talk about things that are that. But then at the same time, you have the conversation exploding around other trafficking situations, like the P. Diddy thing and, Jeffrey Epstein, or other individual, very famous abusers who then, everybody's talking about it. So I think with the porn issue, I think a lot of people are afraid to be seen as not being sex positive, or, or there's this idea that because so many people are on the free porn tube sites, that actually talking about it might self-implicate. Somebody's a user, right?
I
think the shame around it.
I think too, because sex is it's always been the taboo, dirty little secret. Mm-hmm. And then porn especially, that for anybody to be talking negatively about Pornhub or any of those things is, their porn is something that is active in their world as well. So then it's like, stay away from the entire thing. I don't even want to talk about it because I don't want to get caught somehow in it,
Right.
or be a part of it in any way. So I want, because politically it seems like, people start getting on a soapbox of what they feel is right and wrong, and then all of a sudden some crazy scandal comes out, and you're like, oh man, that's of course that guy was saying the exact opposite of what was really happening in his life.
Yeah, I think it falls into conspiracy land at some point. People are like, oh, that's just conspiracy. At one point, I know a lot of people were bringing up stuff that was happening in Hollywood or the music industry or whatever, and they're
right.
like, okay, that's a little bit like tinfoil hat kind of thing. And I think it's what you said, Laila. It is so dark and so bothersome to the core. I mean, this whole interview, I'm so happy that we're doing it. And this whole interview, I'm shaking my head. I have the chills. I'm thinking about
it's
my
incredibly
daughters.
uncomfortable.
I'm thinking about these victims.
Yeah.
It's so uncomfortable because it's not just the acts that are happening. I think what's so uncomfortable is when you talk about that it was deliberate, when you talk about that you're profiting off of it, that then gets into the mental space of and you're continuing it, or you're a part of it,
when
and
you
that
find
gets
out
so
that
dark.
Pornhub, that the machine was built this way, that they made sure early on that these kinds of things could be happening, and that they were protected internally with this, so it could go on for as long as it did until
right, and then doing philanthropy arms and doing this whole thing of greenwashing. Here, we're so
Look
good
over here so you don't look
Right.
over there,
Right.
type of thing.
I mean, that gets so dark that I think it's hard to look at because you don't know how deep it goes. And then what does that mean for the reality that you're living in, right? I mean, isn't that one of the things is you then start to question a lot? And when you question reality, and that sort of makes things possibly crumble. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think the thing that no one wants to say out loud is that obviously so many people make money off of this, and it's really, like you say, an investor is JP Morgan Chase, right? There are people, and you talk about tin hat conspiracy theories. Who is involved at the very top of it? Who are the people that are actually making money from it? Do they not want it to stop because they make so much money from it? How do you take down those walls to get through? We're never going to get rid of the porn industry, by the way.
Right, and I don't think
because
that's the idea.
No,
is to
but
get
to
rid of, but the violent acts,
violent
and, sex
and the
crimes
real
and
sex
abuse
crimes,
and
yes.
trafficking. That
element of it
should have no.
I don't know if there's a question in there, Laila.
we were talking about
I love hearing this.
We were talking about this in the green room here before we started having this conversation. We were talking about how when videos and things are actually put into Pornhub and they're downloaded and all that, how signatures, IDs, proof of anything, that none of that exists. But then how do you then start to implicate and use that? Because people that are trafficked they're going to fucking sign off on things, unwillingly because
they'll be forced to
because they're being threatened in other ways, and they're knowing okay, if I don't agree to let them use this video,
they'll threaten
then
my family.
My family is at risk. So how
do you create? Okay, I think what I'm asking. I think I've got it. The question: how do we create?
I don't know if it's a question. It's so.
I have a question.
Okay.
How do you envision, knowing that the porn industry will never go away, but how do we make it a safe environment for it to exist?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And to your point, that has never been the goal of Trafficking Hub or the work that I do. It's, we're going after Pornhub, but we're going after them for sex crimes.
Right.
And there's a difference between pornography, which is legal and consensual, and, it's in the U.S. constitutionally protected, and sex crimes. And even from a victim's perspective, they hate the term child pornography. They hate the term revenge porn, because what happened to them is not porn. It is crime, and it's filmed crime. And so making sure that there's that clear distinction. However, to your point of how do we make it safer? Well, at the very basic level is age and consent, third party, because I would never want anybody to hand their ID to Pornhub or MindGeek, but third party, there are very legitimate, above board companies that exist for the purpose of ID verification. And they're reliable. They have very advanced systems for doing this, and they can do a biometric scan of your face, match it up with your ID. It's not perfect. It's almost perfect. And they can at least be able to verify that the individuals in the videos are not children, that are not underage, right? And this cannot be done any other way. It cannot be done. Pornhub had only 10 moderators working per shift, so 30 total for all of the PornTube sites. And compare that to Facebook's 15,000. And they were watching up to 2,000 videos, skipping through them, trying to guess who's underage and who's not, because nobody can tell the difference between a 16-year-old body and an 18-year-old body on any consistent basis. Not even a pediatrician can do that. You can't tell the difference between rough sex and rape. You cannot tell the difference between a consensually uploaded video and a non-consensually uploaded sex video, where it actually was consensual sex and then uploaded, right? So the only way to stop this is to require every single person in every single video to be verified for age and consent. Now, consent can be coerced. It definitely happens, and that's a problem that we have to solve. But if we were at least to do this very common sense bare minimum, then that's going to prevent a lot of abuse. And thankfully, and they get no credit for this whatsoever, but after much duress and force, as of September, Pornhub is finally, for new videos, requiring age and consent verification. However, they still have 5.2 million videos on the site where most of them were not verified for age and consent. So they still are a crime scene. They still have illegal content on the site, but we're making progress. And by watching what happened to Pornhub, by watching the consequences that have happened to them, other porn sites are proactively starting to scale up their uploading systems. They're starting to take down a lot of their illegal content. And so we're seeing a shift. We're seeing kind of a domino effect. And what we want at the end of the day is a revision of the way that this free porn, user-generated porn industry works, to globally require age and consent verification. And the way that'll happen is when the credit card companies say, we will not do business with any user-generated porn site that doesn't verify the age and consent of every individual in every video, because they care a lot about the credit card companies, and they will do what they say.
Of course.
That should be in place as just a standard in practice.
Absolutely. And it's actually wild that it's so hard to make that happen.
Why does free porn even exist? Why is it possible for people to go on it? I don't understand why that model is the one that supersedes. Because I remember when I was younger, and I
remember the VHS tapes.
Yeah, no, but it was a full industry. But it
was an industry,
yeah,
right?
It was a business, and it was handled that way. This whole concept of free now, does more money come in for advertising without?
Yes.
I mean,
instead of subscriptions.
100%.
4.6 billion ads.
Wait, right. but how many people globally are watching porn?
You said the numbers earlier. It was
if they were forced to all pay for the porn.
But the point is they won't. And then that means that if you're not giving it away free, there's less for advertisers to put their content on and then make money. And for the platform to make money from advertisers.
Right. It's sort of like the concept of open source. It is open source. It exists. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can take that away. But now that it does, what things can be put in place so if it is free and they're monetizing with ads and whatever, what are the regulations around that, right? Like the credit card companies not being involved would be one way unless there are things put in place. My question too is, remember the FCC? Remember you'd be on radio and you'd say something with 90210. My dad,
standards and
I remember
practices.
like you can't say, but could we say ass?
And you
Could
get
we
one
say-
of them. Yeah.
One of them.
Yeah.
Where is that? It doesn't
Right.
exist. Like this is happening. There's no regulatory board watching this. That to me is one of the most frightening things beside you and probably a handful of other people who are, crusading and on the front lines here. Who's regulating this and why is it not regulated? That's insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there, do actors in the porn industry, do they have a type of union that also protects them? There's nothing like that, right? Because they're...
No, they do.
Oh, they
yeah,
do.
They have some organization with regard to kind of the traditional professional porn industry that since 1988 in the United States, they had a law called USC 2257 that required brick and mortar studio produced porn to have age verification. You'd have to check an ID and the DOJ could come after you if you didn't have that. And you actually had to keep those records.
I remember that at the beginning of every porn, everyone that is within this video is 18 plus, and it was a whole like verification thing that went on.
Right.
But that was when porn had to be purchased. It
Right.
seems like those are
Right.
the things that went away when all of a sudden free porn is what took over.
Yes, the YouTube model of porn is what, and so the distributor, Pornhub never was not required to do this. Like they have argued, well, we're not the producers of the porn. We're just distributing it. And they're the ones profiting from it, but somebody else is the one that's producing it. So they kind of had this excuse of, well, so we're not responsible for 2257 documentation. We're just the platform, right? That actually wasn't true because it's not just the people who produce it, but it's those who transfer it. And they were transferring from their servers onto the devices of millions of users around the world. Every single video had a download button. And it's not like a YouTube download where you can watch it later, but you don't actually own that file. It was actually a transfer of the file. So they were responsible. However, we need to update our laws, right? We live in a digital world. This is the YouTube of porn dominated world with regard to the distribution of porn, and we need to modernize our laws. But to that point, it's like we need that at a governmental level, but they care more about what PayPal and Visa implement as laws or regulations than they do about what the government regulates, because what they're doing has been illegal for years.
Right.
And they've been getting away with it. There's been no repercussions.
And they got a slap on the hand.
They worry about what affects their money.
When I hear 1.8 million, they have to pay 1.8 million. A company
joke.
who's making
It should be 1.8 million per victim at the minimum. Like that's ridiculous with how much
That's
money
like
they
me
make.
pulling a $5 bill out of my pocket.
That's just to be honest, what they would consider it the cost of doing business. And
Right.
and that's just not good enough. That's not going to stop this from happening. And that's why, but it would stop. The reason why they've deleted 91% of the content off this site is because they lost to credit card companies and they were desperate to try to get them back. And they would do anything to try to get them back. And that's what these sites, they don't do this for fun. Like they do this to make a lot of money, and they need payment processors, financial institution. They need the credit card companies. So when the credit card companies say, hey, look, we have anti-money laundering policies. We're having anti-online sexual crime policies, and we're not going to let our card be used on any user-generated porn sites that don't verify age and consent, period. And then you just watch how fast all of these websites will just fall right in line and start doing this because they want to keep the money flowing.
Their money. You're messing with their money.
Well, hey.
You would honestly think that advertisers would also have a policy of not wanting to be aligned with any sort of platform that involves sex crimes. But I mean, and I don't know the brands that do advertise on Pornhub or any of the other sites. But you'd think that was just a standard.
You would think.
I'm not going to advertise my product on this because you have child rape on there. Like that seems
Heinz
pretty
and
fucking
Unilever
logical.
Were, they used to have mainstream brands because remember that they had spent millions of dollars on this image, right? And so they even had Heinz Unilever advertising on Pornhub.
Wow.
They had mainstream brands. They don't anymore. Now it's scams, sex or penis enlargement pills and sex toys and sex sites and stuff like that, where they just have no reputational damage to be done. They don't care.
And they have no integrity. Right.
No,
Laila,
they don't care.
I would imagine in hearing all this, I would imagine that you being the one who is responsible for some of these things now being in place and, videos being taken down, it must be kind of scary to go against a company and people with so much money and power. Have you paid any price for that in any way?
I have, and that is a thread that is woven throughout my book, Takedown, because it has been really hard, and they're not going down without a fight. This has been dirty, like a dirty fight, to be sure. And I've had, me and my family doxing, hacking, death threats, rape threats, my face superimposed onto pornographic images, escort ads made in my name. I've had letters sent to my house, handwritten letters with no return address, listing the middle names of my children that I keep my private life very private, especially after I don't even put my kids' faces online at all. I don't have any personal social media. And they listed the middle names of my children, and they said, we're here close by watching you. And part of that letter said, you're going to get somebody killed. And, stuff like that, right? That's happened. We've moved so many times over the last 4 years. And there has been, that part of the fight has been real. And it's not just me. Like, victims who publicly speak out have had some serious repercussions as well. So, but that, it's, I guess, par for the course for this kind of company that would have set itself up this way and engaged in this kind of behavior for that long. But yeah, that's been part of it.
I'm so sorry that all the good work that you're doing, that it has to be paired with that type of struggle. Has any of it physically come into your life, like these threats? Has it ever made it close to you?
Thank God, no. Yeah, no, it hasn't. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for everything that you do. And I hope anyone listening to this is so ready to jump on board, sign the petitions, be a part of this journey with you into helping you. What is it that we as people can do to help you in this movement? Yeah,
well, like you said, first of all, an easy thing to do that's meaningful is to sign the petition, and you can go to traffickinghubpetition.com and do that. And people are signing it every day. You can read Takedown. So 100% of the proceeds from the sale of Takedown, the book, go to the Justice Defense Fund to help advance this cause and help victims in their fight for justice. So that's another thing. And join Team Takedown. Like, we created Team Takedown for people to have an onboarding ramped into this fight where they can be part of a group of dedicated individuals. We're going to do things. We're going to be, creating letters we're sending to the heads of the credit card companies asking for these changes to policy. Policy makers, we're going to be petitioning them as well. We're going to keep you updated. So you can go to takedownbook.com, and that's where you can do all those things. Sign the petition, buy the book, join Team Takedown, and just stay abreast. Like, share this, because so many people have no idea this ever happened. Like, they think of Pornhub the same way they thought about Pornhub 10 years ago, and they have no idea. And they don't know that it's not just Pornhub either. We're holding Pornhub accountable because we need to create a deterrent to future abusers. We cannot let them say, like this is the cost of doing business. It's a risk benefit calculation. We want that risk to be very high. So we're going to continue going after them till justice is fully served. And that's important for victims too, because they need healing. They need closure as well. And so, but it's not just Pornhub. We want to help take down illegal content across the internet and make sure that the internet is a safer place for generations to come for our children. And so, yeah, you can join the fight that way.
I'm so on board with this.
takedownbook.com.
Layla, I really wanted to get to how we protect our kids and how we can create that environment around this. But we're going to have to do that conversation on our after the show. But everyone that is listening to us, thank you so much. If you want to watch us, you can go and head over to YouTube. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, if you're going through something right now, if you need additional support, then please reach out to me at randyspelling.com/help or go to my Instagram at randyspelling. Thanks.